The Thanksgiving that I'm thinking about is one that occurred when I was about 5 years old, and Eleanor was about a year old. And this Thanksgiving, I can remember it very well. We woke up in the morning with the smell of turkey in the air because Clary Ann, who was Mother's helper at that time, she lived in the house with us and did the cooking and the serving and things like that. Started the turkey very early because you had to in order to get it ready by 2 o'clock or even so.
Was it like a wood stove that she cooked on?
I don't know that, Chris, whether it was wood or gas, but it was wood or gas, and I can't tell you which. I don't know. It was a big black stove, that I remember. But it smelled simply heavenly, and they'd been baking pies, and mincemeat was in the air, and pumpkin pie, and dinner was to be about 2. But all the cousins and my aunts and uncles were to be there around 1 at least. And there was Aunt Amanda and her children, but not her husband because he was still in the East, and Aunt Tillie and the 3 Catherwood children, Aunt Tillie Catherwood and her, but it doesn't seem to me that her husband came either. He was a minister, and he was always very busy and couldn't get away. So when they came visiting, it wasn't very often that the father of that family came. And then
even on Thanksgiving?
Even he was a very strange man. We never did know him very well. Will Catherwood, his name was. Then there was Aunt Dena and Uncle Ted and their 3 children. And we children all played out in front under the big palm tree because that was the way things were. You had a lawn with a palm tree out in front. And the house, this was at 118 South Molino, which was a big gray house with a big porch across the front, and in the one end of the porch was a swing, and that was lots of fun.
One of those swings that was like a couch?
Yes, like a couch. There were big wide steps that led down to the grass. And
were they wooden?
Yes, they were wooden, and we kids sat on them and played on them and jumped from them. And it was really very, very nice. And even then, that last Thanksgiving was terribly hot. I can remember, it seems so strange that the last Thursday in November, and it was hot, really hot. And you'd go in the house, and because of all the cooking that was going on, it was even hotter. And this huge table, but it seems like that the men folk, oh yes, there was Aunt Ursie and Uncle Albert too, Uncle Al. And the men folk and and the ladies ate first at the table because there wasn't room at the table for all the children and all the grown-ups at the same time. And then afterwards, when they finally got through, which seemed an eternity to us children, then we all sat down and we had our Thanksgiving. And that was a lot of fun too. But Eleanor, because she was only a year old, she sat with the grown-ups in her high chair and sat next to my father. She was known as Papa's Peach. And he carved the turkey, although I remember it. We stood around and watched him carve the turkey because that was a big deal. And he gave her this leg of the turkey. He cut off some of the meat. But the turkey bone, she could hardly handle it. She was so little, and the turkey bone was so big.
She wasn't even as big as Hannah, huh?
No, she was about a year old.
Oh,
But, she just had a great time with that, and everybody laughed at how she was, taking it and handling it and getting it all over her face. It was lots of fun. And then I remember, and Mother, of course, always made the cranberry sauce. It wasn't anything that you bought. Mother cooked the cranberries and put them through the sieve, and sometimes we could help her put them through the sieve, and that was lots of fun too.
Were they dried?
No, they were fresh cranberries, and she cooked them, and then you poured them through the sieve, and you took a spoon and worked them back and forth, and then she put sugar with them, and it came out real firm and nice. It was really awfully good.
But it wasn't anything like what we have in cans now.
Well, it's
not as jellied or something.
No, it wasn't quite as jellied, and it seems to me it was a lighter red than you get in a can. But it tasted very similar. That's the one thing that I don't think they've done too badly with is the canned cranberry sauce.
Did you have servants that would come around and serve people?
Just Clary Ann and Mother, of course, helped too.
Did Clary Ann sit at the table and eat with the adults, or did she have to eat by herself?
No, she ate with the adults. She had been a friend of Aunt Dena's and lived in Huntington Beach before she came to work for Mother. And they had been friends, and they knew her since she was a young girl. And she was like a friend of the family, but she did the cooking, and she lived in the house with us, and she had a room. Her room was right next to the kitchen, and another door that came from her room came into the dining room, we children were not allowed to go in Clary Ann's room. That was Clary Ann's room, and we had to stay out of there. But once in a while, she invited us in, and we could sit on her bed and look around, and it was just, that was a big, exciting thing to do.
Was she the same age then as Aunt Dena, or was she still young?
She was still young. She was, I imagine she was in her late 20s at that time. But she had red hair, very red hair, and blue eyes. I remember that about her. And she was a very nice person. We all liked her very much. She was,
Did she take you for walks and things?
No, I don't ever remember that. All I remember that she, was busy with the cooking and all those internal dishes to be washed with the family. You see, when I was little, before Hank was born, there were 5 children and 2 adults. And besides that, usually there were other people that came to stay with us, like through the winter maybe, that from Kansas, friends of my father's or somebody, they'd come and stay a month. They'd thought nothing of that. That was the way people did. And I suppose if my folks went to Kansas, they would have stayed a month with them, but they never did. But then after the dinner was over and everybody was so full, they were just groaning and moaning and carrying on, said they'd never been so full and so forth. And then lots of times Helen, that was Helen Sundbye, she would play the piano and we would all sing, and that was lots of fun because my father was very good at singing. He could sing as loud as anybody.
What kind of songs did you sing? Do you remember any of them?
No, the only songs I remember was at a different time when my Uncle H.O. Meyer, my father's brother, sang, and he always sang this, and his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
And was that Uncle Hisko?
Yeah, that was Uncle Hisko Meyer. He was a minister also, and Aunt Esther, but they weren't there at that Thanksgiving. They were in the East. But I remember one of the things that Helen used to play was something about Hawaii, my blue Hawaii, and then there was another one that was something about a tulip. You wore a tulip, and she could play that, and she played ragtime.
Oh boy!
And that was almost sinful, It was really, people kind of looked askance at playing ragtime.
Oh boy! Oh wow! She must have been a swinger.
Oh, she was a swinger.
Helen Sundbye.
Yeah, Helen Sundbye, and she was a very large girl. She'd always been fat, always, all her life, and but she could play the piano. We had a good time. And then after that, and as time went on and the day grew cool and we got in the house, we children went upstairs to play. Because in the upstairs, there was a large room that was my mother's bedroom, and there was another bedroom that was for Amy and I. And then from my mother's bedroom, there was a dark hall that went out onto a sleeping porch. And on the sleeping porch, they put up wooden shutters in the winter, and sometimes I slept out there, but mostly it was the boys. And I can't remember who else. But playing out there was very exciting, especially going through that dark hall. And it was kind of scary to go through that dark hall. And there were trunks and things in there. And in one of the trunks was my father's coronet. And once in a while, Mother would let us open the trunk and look at Father's coronet that he played when he was in the Salvation Army.
Oh, boy.
And that was a real thrill. And then you asked me how I wondered if I knew how Mother and Father met.
Mm-hmm.
And as I remember, and I could be mistaken about this, but as I remember, Mother and Aunt Dena were friends. And they went to the Salvation Army. And my father, as I said, played the cornet at the Salvation Army. And I think that's where they met. They knew each other, I imagine, about a year, 2 years maybe, before they were married. And then they married. They met. And, of course, Mother and Aunt Dena and Uncle Ted and my father had a double wedding.
I didn't know that.
Yes, they
had. It was
had.
in 1901.
Yeah. I have pictures someplace of the double wedding. It was in the newspaper.
Well, let's stick with the Thanksgiving. You're still up there playing in the dark room.
That was fun.
Well, when you say you played, do you remember what kind of games
we used
kids
to.
played?
Oh yes, we played hide and go seek, and we'd get into the closets, and we got into my mother's closet and got in amongst her best clothes, and she was furious, just furious, because I imagine best clothes weren't as easy to come by then as they might be in later days. And especially her beautiful gown that was velvet printed with flowers. Oh, that was so beautiful. And here were the boys wrapping themselves around with that beautiful dress. Oh, she was furious.
How old were the boys?
Well, I was about 5, so the boys must have been 9, 10, 11, around that age. And I don't remember exactly, but they must have been around that age. And then we'd run, of course, and scream and holler, and every once in a while from down below would say, "You children must be more quiet up there." And the big folks were trying to talk.
Yeah.
And all this screaming and carrying on. It was a lot of fun. And then after a while, around 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, around that, everyone would just, they couldn't understand it, but they really could go for another piece maybe of turkey and maybe some more pumpkin pie. And everything was spread out on the table, and you went and helped yourself at about that time. And that was a lot of fun too. And then after around 9:30 or so or 10, everybody had to go home because the Aunt Dena and Uncle Ted had to go clear to Huntington Beach, and the Catherwoods.
That's a long ways away.
Yes, yeah, it was a long ways away, right? And those times,
Well, it must be 50 miles.
Yeah, it was, but they had to go, and so they had to leave. So then the Catherwoods had to go, I think, to Riverside. Roughneck, get under the table.
Go on, Ruffy. Go on.
Oh, you can't go in there either.
Roughneck.
So they had to go home.
To Riverside.
Well,
did everybody have cars by then, or did they go in carriages, or take the train?
I really can't remember, Chris. I don't. I was about 5 years old, and all I knew was that they had to go. And it was a lot of getting on of coats and caps, and I don't remember whether they went in a horse. They must have had a car.
But that would have been, what, about 1913? Well, there was cars.
They probably had a car. Yeah. But those cars were very interesting, Chris, because when it came night, the man of the car had to get out in front, open the front of the lights, and take a match and light the lights. And sometimes they didn't work, and that was really exciting.
So other people could see you, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
And then if it was dark, and you just would creep along, and everybody was looking out of the side of the car to see if they could see where the edge of the road was, and telling Father up in front, "Well, we can see the edge of the road on our side," It really was fun.
I can imagine driving 50 miles at night to a valley
Yeah,
looking
yes,
to see
yes,
into the
yes,
road.
yes, right, right.
Gosh.
They probably didn't get home before midnight. Probably took them 2 or 3 hours.
For God's sake.
But those were fun days too, Chris. You know, these days you think, well, everything is fun now, but it was fun in those times too.
Tell me more about what you had. You said you got pumpkin pie and turkey and cranberry sauce. Do you remember anything else?
Mashed potatoes. We always had great heaps of mashed potatoes, and there was much beating of them. That was a ritual. You held them in one arm in a great big bowl, and with a big wooden spoon or fork, you whipped them. And Mother would stick her finger in to see if they had enough salt, or butter, or milk, or cream even. And they had to be just so. And Mother had a very special recipe that she stuffed the turkey with. And it was so light, just like a feather, you know, I mean, and it had to be done. We picked bowls and bowls of bread that was 2 days old. It had to be 2 days old. And you picked it, and we children sat around before Thanksgiving and picked the bread, and you'd pick it with your fingers until it was all that was left was the crust, and it was like a little cave that you had made in the bread. And that was really fun. That was our contribution, you see, to the Thanksgiving. And then Mother made this wonderful dressing that smelled so good, and she put. I'm sure it was, sage in it. Sage, and that was the secret of its deliciousness, that it had sage in it. And she grew the sage out in her garden.
Mm.
And sometimes when we'd come home from school, she'd give us sage tea to drink that she made from the sage in her garden, too.
For God's sake. Was that a treat?
Yes, oh yes, because she didn't have time to fiddle around with things like that very often, you know, with all that big family to look after.
Mm-hmm. But what do you remember about the food that is different than what we eat now?
There was always lots of bread, and people ate lots of bread. And the bread that we got was very good. It was we'd have to walk up to the Crown Bakery on Colorado Street, and there was a great big lion on top of the Crown Bakery. That was part of it. I don't know why it was there, but it was a pretend lion that was on the top. And that was always fun to go up, and we'd walk up there and then carry the loaves of bread home, and they were fresh and hot. And sometimes when we got home, Mother would let us have a piece of the hot bread with peanut butter on it, and oh, was that good.
They had peanut butter back
Oh,
then.
yes. Oh, yes, peanut butter. Yeah, you could even get that from the Heinz 67 or 47 something varieties, and he came around with a little cart and a horse, and you'd go out and you'd say, oh, I'll have some peanut butter, and he'd put it in sort of a carton, and we'd bring it in the house.
I mean, he'd dish it right up there?
Yes. He had a great big thing of it, and we'd dish it out, and you'd get it from him.
The Heinz man?
Yeah.
He had all of his varieties in a cart?
Yeah. It was just like it was sort of like a very small truck, only with horse and buggy. Mm-hmm. I think it only had 2 wheels, and it was white. And he opened the back doors there was a handle that lifted up, and that opened the door, and it smelled like pickles and all sorts of interesting things. And I think he even had sort of delicatessen-like things in it. Like there was something that had onions and black things in it. I never knew. I think it was some kind of a fish. But we never got any of that.
Probably pickled herring.
Maybe it was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it smelled very, very pungent, very good, very, very good. And those, let's see, what else do I remember about the food?
What about drink? Did you drink milk?
Oh, we drank milk.
And the adults did?
I don't know if the adults, I think so. My father was very fond of milk, which was a bad thing because he was quite heavy, and he wasn't supposed to be getting any heavier, and he just loved milk. But the milk that we got was from the dairyman. He brought it around in glass bottles, and he put it out in front of your house. And sometimes it stood there all day if nobody was home, and the cream all came to the top of the bottle. But it should, now we think milk must be in the refrigerator immediately. But all day long, the milk stood sometimes in the sun, you know. But and it wasn't pasteurized. It was just raw milk.
It's probably much fresher, though.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
Had longer to go.
Yeah. But it was very good.
Do you remember them ever drinking wine or beer?
No,
or liquor?
not at my house. Not at my house. My father was very much against it. And so, and my mother, I don't think she was against it so much as that she just didn't drink it. Because that was part of the Salvation Army thing, too. And also we were not supposed to play cards either. I didn't even see a deck of regular cards until after I was quite old, 12 or 13 anyway. They just weren't allowed in the house. Those were sinful cards. So,
but smoking? Did anyone
no,
smoke?
no one smoked.
Not even a cigar?
No, I've forgotten. Maybe Uncle Ted smoked a pipe. I can't remember that for sure. But I know they didn't smoke cigarettes. I know that. And I don't remember any cigars either. I just don't remember any. And I probably would, because to a child they would be very pungent.
Did you have a nurse?
No.
To take care of the children?
No. No.
Well, was your father well off by then? When this Thanksgiving you're talking about?
No, he was probably in his early 30s or so, around that. Maybe 35. My goodness, and he only lived 10 years after that. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
He really made it big later.
Yeah, in the next 10 years, he made it very big. Yeah, right. It was a very interesting time. And that's about all I remember about that Thanksgiving.